So howdy YouTube, Unky Joe here, Unky Joe's Playhouse. Today, we're going to do another video. Why? Well, why not? I can. So let me tell you what's going on. In a minute, you're going to see that old familiar beige box of mine. The one that I've tried Unraid and FreeNAS, and it's kind of like my test unit. It's got a Core i5 processor, 3470. It's got 16 gig of RAM. It's got 5 total serial ATA ports on it. 2 of those are serial ATA 3 and the other 3 are serial ATA 2. So what I thought I'd do is set up some tiered shared storage using an Exponology box or using the Exponology software, and then serving these out to my Hyper-V machines over iscsi. So if you've ever dealt with iscsi before, you might find this video interesting. So what I'm going to do is show you the build. I'm not going to show you the Exponology install. I've done that video 100 times already, so just go back and check one of my prior videos and you'll be able to figure it out. And there's a really good website called Exponology Me that's got full details on how to set up an Exponology computer, or a computer running Exponology, I should say. So I'm going to show you the build process and what drives I put in there. Now I took my old SSD out of my new Ryzen build because I got those 2 Samsung drives, and I took that SanDisk and I'm going to make that a shared drive under Exponology and make that my tier 1 storage. That tier 1 means really fast storage, and then the 500 gig volumes will be put in a RAID, SHR RAID, giving me about 1.5 terabytes of storage, or gigabytes of is it terabytes? 1.5 gigabytes of storage. For non-tier 2 or for non-tier 1 storage. In other words, for slower storage. And then I'm going to serve them up to my Hyper-V server and see how that works out. So I'm going to show you the build, putting the drives in, that kind of thing. And then we'll go into the meat and potatoes, and I'll show you how to set up an iscsi share under Exponology or Synology. They're synonymous. And then I'll show you how we share that out to Hyper-V. So let's get started. Had to do a little battery change there. So while I have a captive audience, while I have this thing open, I bought a dual Intel NIC months ago. Here it is. Yeah, I want to put that into the system because at some point I may want to combine these 2 NIC cards, NIC adapters together. So this is only a PCI card, but we'll go ahead and pop it in, and that way I have it for future use. And I think I'm going to disable the onboard NIC and just use the Intel dual NIC card here. Okay, so we got the Intel dual NIC in here. Let's go ahead and start putting the hard drives in. Now I'm gonna put the the serial ATA or the SSD drive in on the first controller, because this computer has a weird way of doing controllers, and that is serial ATA 6 controllers are the first two, and then serial ATA 2 controllers are the remaining 3. I don't know why they did it that way, but that's the way they did it. And then here's my 3 500 gig hard drives. Those ever-present Samsung 500 gig drives that just refuse to fail. I used to hate Samsung when they first came out eons ago. Now I've warmed up to them. And then I'm not going to put anything in the remaining slot. I have another 500 gig hard drive I could easily put in there, but I want to wait. There's the beige box. Drives are installed. I've got the network card. I got the Intel dual NIC installed. Maybe later we'll put a 10 gig Mellanox card in there. I don't know. Anyway, there it is. All right, so there you go. The build is completed. You notice we put the You notice we put the SSD drive in the first drive bay on that beige box, and we did that because that motherboard only has 2 serial ATA 3 connectors on it. The rest are serial ATA 2 for a total of 5 or 6. No, 5. So I've got my fastest drive, which is the SSD drive, on the fastest controller so it doesn't slow it down. And then the other drives, one is on a serial ATA 3 and the other one's on a serial ATA 2 controller. Now, what I could do, or what I could be doing, is just setting up direct attached storage. Now that I have those H700 controllers in those 2 Dell servers, I can run SSD drives in there. I can run drives larger than 2 terabytes. But I thought it'd be cool to show you how shared storage works in a they mainly use this in an enterprise level environment. The idea is you have multiple spinning platters and you get faster, what are called IOPS, on shared storage. So it makes it great for things like database servers and that kind of thing. Normally I would just use direct attached storage, and we're going to do a video on that as well. We'll get some SSDs and pop them into those Dells and use them locally. But I just thought it would be interesting to do a video on shared storage to show you what the potential is for using that, and how it could make your life a little bit easier when running Hyper-V and multiple Hyper-V hosts. All right, so we are on the, this is the beige box we just got done building. And as you can see, it is running Synology Xmenology. And let me go out and show you how I've got the storage configured. So I have 2 RAID groups. Well, actually they're SHR RAIDs, and the first one is not even an SHR RAID. It is simply that SanDisk, or yeah, is it a SanDisk? Yeah. Anyway, it's an SSD drive, 240 gig SSD drive, set up as a SHR without data protection. So it's just a simple volume. And this is what the industry would call my tier 1 storage. This is the expensive, fast storage. Well, in theory, because the SSDs get about 500 megabits per second. So, and then the other volume is an SHR of 3 465 or 500 gig hard drives. So I get effectively almost 1 terabyte of storage out of those 3 drives. Now I'm going to be adding another spinning hard drive to this later, because I can put up to 5 drives in here, so I've only got 4. But I've got another 500 gig laying around I'm going to put in. But I digress. So this is how my storage is set up. So now let's switch over to MCS Lab 1, which is one of those Dell servers running Hyper-V. And these are where I have, these machines should look familiar if you've been part of the, or following the Windows Lab series. I've got my domain controller for the lab, and then a bunch of workstations set up for it. All of these are now running on what I call the tier 1 shared storage off of that Xmenology SAN. I'm going to call this one a SAN because that's what it is. It's a storage area network. That's why I set it up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to boot up this machine, and then we're going to go out and go over to the Xmenology SAN, and we're going to monitor that screen. and see what kind of, you'll see the kind of information it gives me. So I'm just going to go ahead and right click on that and tell it to start, and then I'll switch over here to the Exponology, and we're going to go to iscsi because that's how I've set it up. So this is the this is my 2016 domain controller from my lab booting up, and you see the kind of IOPS I'm getting are I'm getting very good IOPS on here. Now this is only one machine starting up, and what it does is, instead of the hard drive storage being on the directly attached to that Dell server, the storage for the virtual machine is located on this NAS or SAN unit, this Exponology SAN. Let me switch back over to the lab again so you can see it's booting up. Go ahead and open that. And then I should be able to, in theory, log into it. And I'm actually going to start up a couple of the workstations as well, just to show you. They don't seem any slower to me or any faster or anything like that, but there's the domain controller booted up. Let's boot up a Windows 10 enterprise machine. We'll go ahead and start that, and while that is starting, we will switch over back over to our Exponology SAN, and you can see our IOPS as it reads and writes from the iscsi drive. Now that's volume 1. All of these are running off of. I've set all these virtual machines on the MCS lab to get their shared storage from this SAN, and so in effect all they're using is the SSD drive. Okay, let's go back to the lab, and we'll see that our virtual machine is now up and running. So they're fairly quick to run. I see with my own eye, I can see no discernible speed difference to running these on direct attached storage. But you see the machine is up and running, both the domain controller and one of the virtual machines. And if I come back to the Exponology SAN here, you'll see over time this will settle down. So let's talk about why I'm doing all this. I don't need this. In fact, in my circumstances, and probably yours in a lab environment, you would be better off with just direct attached storage. That means storage, whether it be SSDs, spinning hard drives, whatever, that is local to the machine you're using. Right now in that Dell, I have 2 spinning hard drives, and those are SAS drives, and that's what Windows boots off of and runs off of. They're the boot drives. I have no other drives in there. The plan is to get a couple of 500 gig SSDs in there and use those as the direct attached storage for both, or for the virtual machines only. The same thing with the other Dell R710, the production, MCS production. The plan is to get 2 500 gig SSD drives and use those as direct attached storage. But what I'm doing today is showing you how to use shared storage, because one, it's fun. It's just fun to play around with stuff. And this will kind of give you an idea how the big guys in the enterprises use their systems. Now, in a perfect world, I would have multiple spinning hard drives in here, like in a RAID 10 array or a RAID 60 array, lots of platters. The more platters, the more IOPS you get. It's not so much about reliability and fault tolerance as it is about platter speed and IOPS speed. But now that we have SSDs, it's just my opinion, but anybody creating a SAN that doesn't use SSD drives to get their IOPS up is just kind of, I mean, SSDs are getting very close in price to spinning hard drives. So the route I'm going to go with both direct attached storage and with shared storage is eventually my shared storage, this SAN, is going to have all SSD drives in it, and I'm going to be able to share storage with either esxi or HyperV or any other virtualization platform I choose to use. And then the other thing I'm going to do on this Exponology is I'm going to put a 10 gig network adapter in there at some point in the future. So planning ahead. But I just wanted you to know why I was playing around today with a storage area network. So let's get started on showing you how to set up a share. Alright, so if we switch over here to production, to my production Hyper-V unit, you'll see that I've got several virtual machines over here. Let's just look at, let's go with Web 1 for now. This is a web server for running WebMin, VirtualMin, so it's a fairly small machine. So let's right click on that and go down to settings, and if you look here under the hard drive, you'll see it's on a local drive here. So this machine is using what they call direct attached storage, and if we come down here to our folder view, you'll see that drive D is directly attached to this machine. This is it's a RAID 1, 1 terabyte drives in a RAID 1 array. And you'll even see down here that the smart paging file location is under the D drive virtual machines. So what I want to do is set up some shared storage, and then I want to move the storage. I want to keep the virtual machine on this production machine, but I want to move its storage over to shared storage. So let's do that next. So let's get some shared storage set up for the production NAS now, or for the production Hyper-V. Now I'm not going to put it over here on volume 1. This is going to be tier 2 storage because I really don't need anything that zippy. So we're going to set up the tiered or the shared storage on volume 2. So what we want to do is come up here to Storage Manager, and the first thing we need to do is create an iscsi target. Now I already have one for Hyper-V, but what I'm going to do is create one for production. So we'll call this MCS production, and I think I can use a hyphen in the name. Now, because we're in a lab environment and because we're in a local area network, I typically don't use confirmation on any of this. You could enable password authentication, but I don't see any need to do it here on a local network. What I do want to do is come down here to the IQN number and go click on that field and go to the end, and just look here. It's creating what the IQN target is creating, and that's 8E110 are the numbers I'm going to pay attention to at the end of this. So I'm going to go ahead and here and click on OK, and then that should create another iscsi target down here, and it does. So this is 8E110, and this one is 8E110. So what I want to do is I want to remove. Yeah, I want to remove that one because I made a boo-boo. I want these IQN numbers to be unique. So what I'm going to do is start over. You see, don't you just love boo-boos in progress? You see how it gave it the same IQN number? I don't want it giving it the same IQN number. So I'm going to call this, we'll call this Hyper-V production, just so I can keep it in my head. And then I'm going to click on this field. I'm going to go to the end, and I'm going to call it, I'm just going to delete the 0 and add a 1 to it. You can create the IQN target anything you want, but I want it to be unique and different from the other one. So now if we see this one, we'll see that this is IQN of E110, and this one should be E111, just so we can keep them separate. Now the next thing I need to do is we need to create a logical unit to connect that production to. So we'll go up here to iscsi LUN, and you'll see we already have one in here for our tier 1 storage. So we're going to create another one, and this is going to be a iscsi file level LUN, and we're going to create it on volume 2, and we're going to call this production. LUN, production LUN. Then we're going to allow thin provisioning, and I'm only going to give it 100 gigabyte. That should be big enough. The LUN type is going to be a regular file LUN, and the SCSI target mapping is going to be Hyper-V production. So we'll go ahead and click on next and apply, and now what it should have done is gone out there and created that LUN unit for Hyper-V, and it looks like it has. Alright, So now we'll see our Hyper-V is connected, but we'll see Hyper-V production is not. So now we need to switch over to the production Hyper-V machine and connect up to this unit. Alright, so now we're on MCS production on our production Hyper-V machine, and we're going to click on the Windows button. We're going to come up here to Windows Administrative Tools and iscsi Initiator. Okay, now it tells us it's not running. The service is required to be started for iscsi to function. To start the service now and have the service start automatically, click the yes. So that's what we're going to do. Now the first thing we need to do is come over here to the Discovery tab, and we're going to go to Discover Portal, and we're going to add the name of the machine. Now if you don't have DNS set up on your network, then you'll need to enter the IP address in here. I like using names so that if the IP address changes later, it can always reconnect to it and I don't have to come back and fiddle with it. I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. And then I'm going to click on refresh. Then I'm going to come over here to target, and you'll see here now that we have two different targets. We have the one that ends in E110, or we have the one that ends in E111. Well, if you remember, we made this E111 our default iscsi connection for this unit. So all we have to do is highlight it and then click on connect. Okay, it's going to put the target name in there, and then it's going to add this connection to the list of favorite targets. This will make the system automatically attempt to restore the connection every time this computer restarts. And that's good, because if you try to restart Hyper-V and you don't have your iscsi LUN available, it's not going to see the virtual machines or where to run them from. So we'll click on OK. And you'll see now down here it says it is connected. Alright, well that's all fine and good, but how do we use that drive now? Let's go under File Explorer and see if we can see it. And you can see under here I've got my local disk, and I've got another local disk, and then I've got a couple of network disks, but I've got nothing to connect. Well, that's because there's another step we need to do. So if you right click on here and go on this PC and go to Manage, it'll bring up Server Manager. We don't want to do that. So what we need to do is come over here. We want a computer management. So let's come over here to the Start menu, and let's go to Windows Administrative Tools. And then I'm going to drag this onto the desktop, Computer Management, create a link. So we'll double click on Computer Management. Now, with iscsi, they're block level devices, so you actually have to come here to Disk Management and actually create a hard drive. Okay, and you'll notice if I scroll down here now, there's a 100 gig hard drive that is not in use. So it's offline. So the first thing we want to do is right click on it over here and bring it online. Now it's also not initialized, so the other thing we want to do is right click and initialize the disk. And I'm just going to use master boot record because it's under 2 terabytes. Okay, so now it's online and it's initialized, so now we need to create a volume. So I'm going to right click and do a new simple volume. Follow the prompts. We're going to give it 100 gigabyte. We're going to make it drive letter, I called it S on the other one, so I'm going to call it S on this one for shared storage. Next, and we're going to go ahead and format it as NTFS, and we're going to call this shared. And click on next, and then finish. And we'll let the drive format. So in the long and the short of this is that Windows creates that iscsi share as an actual volume that you connect to. So we formatted the volume now. It should be out there and be available. So if we come here and redo it, there we go. Now I'm going to create a couple of folders out here. One is going to be called a virtual machines. We'll do virtual machines. And then under the virtual machines directory, I'm going to create another one called VHD. Now that's just the way I like to do it. You do it any way you want to. And then I'm going to close that window. Now if we open Hyper-V, we're going to move that machine. We're going to move its storage anyway to a different location. So we're going to go to Web 1, and I'm going to right click on it. and I'm going to choose move. Okay, next. Now what I'm going to do, I can move the virtual machine and its storage to another computer. I'm just going to move the storage. So I'm going to move the virtual machine storage, and I'm going to move all the virtual machine's data to a single location. Next, and then I'm going to browse to that location. So I'm going to go to my S drive and I'm going to go virtual machines. Select folder. Okay, it tells me there's 100 gig free and the size of this virtual machine is 16 gig, so it'll fit. I'm going to click on next, and then I'm going to click on finish, and it'll start moving the virtual machine over. And if we monitor here, you'll see it's actually going to do it over this connection, which is fine because it's moving it to the iscsi storage. I don't have the iscsi storage set up on the 10 gigabit LAN because I don't have a 10 gigabit network card in that SAN unit. But we'll go ahead and we'll let this move, and then we'll come back when it's done and see what the results were. So I've switched over temporarily back to the Synology SAN unit, and you can see that our data is coming over. It is transferring. Here's our throughput. Here's our IOPS that are about 600, running in that range, 250 range, which is not bad for a file move. And then the latency we're getting on the file transfer. So if you'll observe something, you remember when we started up our virtual machines on the lab HyperV machine, which is using tier 1 storage, or SSD storage, we'll call it that our IOPS were much, much faster on booting those machines. So now this is a transfer test, but what we'll do, and this is why you have tiered storage. Some stuff you want to be fast, you want to have it on that SSD drive. Some stuff that boots up and doesn't have a whole bunch of activity on it or just runs a process in the background can go on tier 2 level storage or the slower spinning drive storage. So we have Web 1's shared storage moved over there. Let's do the same with Web 2 because this is my hosting software for my website. So we'll go into settings and just verify that it is indeed on the local hard drive. Both the virtual hard drive and the virtual machine file are both on the D drive, and we want to move those now. Just remember, we're going to move the storage, not the virtual machine. And we could even, in theory, we could move just the machine data to a different location, or we could only move the virtual machine's virtual hard disk so that the actual control file for the virtual machine could remain on local storage, and then the data would be over on shared. But I want to move the data as well and the virtual machine settings, so I'm going to click on next. Again, we're going to put this on drive S under virtual machines, select the folder, next, and then finish. And we'll let it, we'll switch over here while it's performing the move and see what kind of throughput and IOPS we're getting. So again, it's writing to an SHR RAID as it's moving that data over. So our write speeds are not going to be phenomenal. They're not bad. They're better than they were on my Unraid server when I tried it. I was getting 30 megabits per second after the cache drive filled on Unraid. So that's why I don't use Unraid. And you know how I feel about FreeNAS, just too clunky for me. So it is transferring the virtual machine file and the virtual hard drive over to this shared storage. So we'll let that run, and then we'll come back and we'll try to boot up the virtual machine and let you know how that goes. Alright, so let's see if that worked. Let's right click, go to settings, and let's see if our virtual hard drive is now over on the S drive, and our virtual machine is over on the S drive. So this is a machine that needs to be up and running to host my website. So I'm going to go ahead and click on start. And we'll make sure it starts booting, and then we'll switch over to the SAN. Okay, it's loading files. So if we switch over here now to the SAN, we'll see our IOPS going up and our throughput going up on the reads as it boots this server up. And it looks like it has come up to the login, and so it should stabilize now. Let's switch back over here. and you'll see it is up and running. It's running CentOS. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can log in, if I can remember. Bear with me a second. I need to... And yes, it does have the right IP address. I'm sorry I brought you along with me. I just wanted to make sure it had the right IP address. And now I should be able to log out. And then I should be able to minimize the machine and keep it running. And if we switch back over here to Chrome, we can see that the production run is working fine. And the beauty of this managing these iscsi's is I can monitor both the one for the HyperV machine in the lab, and we see it's still running just fine. You'll see it's having minimal impact on RAM, minimal impact on CPU resources. It really is quite frugal with resources, and the machines appear to be running fine. Now, something we need to keep in mind is because since now we're running shared storage, not only does my Dell server need to be up and running, but my Synology SAN needs to be up and running at all times as well, whenever that HyperV machine is running. That's one of the downsides of shared storage, is that instead of having direct attached storage on there these machines run off of, they're now running off of another physical machine. So now instead of one point of failure, we have 2 points of failure. But that being said, we also have the ability to be agile. Say, for example, one of those Dell servers fails. I now have the ability with shared storage to quickly move it onto another virtual machine and spool it back up. So there are downsides to shared storage, there are upsides to shared storage. The other downside is that shared storage can be, with spinning drives, can be a bit slower than direct attached storage. In fact, you'll find most people agree that in a small environment like, you know, for a 100 user or less network, shared storage is probably not the best idea because you have a couple of points of failure if your array fails. But that, you know, I mean, you just have to plan ahead and think about how you're going to do your storage for your virtual machines. Now, this storage is separate from a CIFS or SMB share. You can do that with Hyper-V, but you can't do it with Synology, FreeNAS, or Unraid. You cannot use their SMB to share with a Hyper-V server because you will get an error, and this is a known error, and it's a problem with Samba. It's not a problem with Windows, but the Samba implementation of the CIFS or SMB share has got a couple of flaws in it, and now, you know, Microsoft has moved all their servers to secure connections to where it encrypts the connections between workstations and machines, and that's something that Samba currently doesn't support, or it doesn't support very well. I know because I tried it myself. I thought, well, I'll just set up an SMB share and that'll be our shared storage. It worked under Windows, but it doesn't work under Xpenology, and it doesn't work under FreeNAS, and it doesn't work under Unraid. I've tried it. Now, one important thing to remember, and I'm going to go over this on my Synology video as well, but I wanted to include it in this video so that you can see it for yourself, is that by default, Windows 10, the Fall Creators Update, now uses SMB3 exclusively. So you may encounter some problems with connecting your Windows 10 units up to Synology. So what you want to do is come into the control panel here and go under File Services. And then right here under SMB, you want to go to Advanced Settings. Now, you want to change this. By default, Synology has it on SMB2 as a maximum SMB. You want to change that to SMB3, and you will see a phenomenal, well, you should see an increase in transfer speeds. Now, if you're running Windows 7 and some older units, you probably want to keep SMB2 or SMB1 enabled. Microsoft says it could be a security risk, but in a local network, I don't see any problems with it. So that's one thing you want to make sure, and make sure your enable opportunistic locking is checked. So bump that up to SMB3, make sure the minimum is SMB1. encryption mode left to auto, and enable opportunistic locking, and you will see some increased transfer speeds between Windows and Synology. So there you go. We have shared storage under Hyper-V going to a Synology NAS or an Exponology NAS. You can do this with FreeNAS. You can do this with Unraid. They both have iscsi connectors in them. I'm not going to show you how to connect them on here because I don't use either one of them, but you should be able to replicate this, and you can replicate it in Windows as well. If you remember some of my really early Windows videos where I was setting up Windows drive pools, you can do the same thing. Set up a dedicated Windows server with a bunch of hard drives in it running drive pool, set up the iscsi, and connect between them. Now, for some reason, Synology won't let me use the block level iscsi. I don't know why. I've looked it up and I can't figure it out. I'm going to put a ticket into them asking them why. So I went with the file level iscsi, which is fine. But the SMB using, or I'm sorry, the iscsi using the block has a few more advantages. But until I'm familiar with what those are, I don't want to send you astray and tell you, hey, yeah, do it this way. So, and the other thing to keep in mind, like I've mentioned before, is if your SAN device, your Synology NAS or whatever NAS you're using or SAN device goes offline, your virtual machines are going offline as well. So keep that in mind. That could be a problem if, you know, electricity expense is an issue for you and you don't want to keep those servers running at all times. You're just going to have to be mindful, hey, if I bring that server up, I have to bring up the shared storage because there's a bunch of stuff out there on it. And you probably have noticed that I don't usually dress before I get on camera. Well, I do. I don't get on camera naked or anything, but I usually don't dress up when I get on camera because I want to keep this kind of carefree and easy going. In fact, I follow Barnacules' lead and I wear my pajama pants whenever I can because I'm basically around the house and I like to be comfortable. I do keep shoes on my feet because I have diabetic nerve pain, so it makes it a lot easier to walk on my feet when I have shoes on. But I digress. But I just didn't want you to think I don't care enough to get dressed up, but this is who I really am. My customers will attest to it. My family will attest to it. This is what you get. This is Unky Joe. I don't want to pretend to be something I'm not, so I could get up and style my hair and put on a dress shirt and a tie and stand behind a pretty desk and really make some eye-popping video, but that's not the guy I am. This is who I am. So I hope nobody takes offense to it. Not that I wouldn't dress up for you guys, but I do bathe on a daily basis and occasionally run a comb through my hair, so just FYI. Anyway, we hope you found this video entertaining and informative as always. Give us a thumbs up down below if you like what you saw. Leave your comments in the comments section, and don't forget, if you can spare a dime or two, we take PayPal and Patreon donations. All of your donations go back into great content for this channel. We're now past the 2,100 subscriber mark. Again, something not possible without you guys. Keep the donations rolling in. They're greatly appreciated. We're going to put that money to good use. We got lots of plans for lots of videos coming up. And I wanted to share with you on my Synology box, my brand new one, I found a bug in the DSM software. And I contacted Synology and I let them know, hey, I'm trying to do X over Y and it won't work, and they were very responsive. They got right back to me. Well, first I tried a chat and the guy in chat said go submit a ticket because this is something out of his league. I submitted a ticket. I had an answer back within a couple hours, and then within a day or two they finally had escalated up to a senior technician and said thank you for discovering this bug in our software, and they're going to be fixing it hopefully in the next release. It wasn't fixed in the release that was just put out the other day for Synology, but that's okay. I will be patient. But that just shows you so far how good their level of support is at Synology. So we'll see if they fix the problem, because I can't do the video I want to do for you moving forward until they do. And I don't want to highlight this. I don't want to put a negative video up about Synology until they've had an opportunity to address the issue. So again, thanks for watching. So appreciative for all your patronage. And don't forget, we'll see you on the other side.